Welcome back, everybody. It's Wednesday, April 30th, 2025. On this date in 1789, George Washington was inaugurated as the first president of the United States and delivered a humble address full of gratitude to his countrymen, inspiring all future elected officials to always act with selfless integrity and honesty. Did I say always? Anyway, could anyone show up at the Trump UA graduation event who might be a bigger draw than the president himself? Well, if so, it's probably the guy we'll talk about in a moment. Also today, we have some public safety bills, a marsupial that was on the loose, and a big shipping company's decision to scale back. My name's Ike Morgan, and we're down in Alabama.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. Not everyone is careful with your personal information, which might explain why there's a victim of identity theft every 5 seconds in the U.S. Fortunately, there's LifeLock. LifeLock monitors hundreds of millions of data points a second for threats to your identity. If your identity is stolen, a U.S.-based restoration specialist will fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Save up to 40% your first year by visiting lifelock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
10 years from today, Lisa Schneider will trade in her office job to become the leader of a pack of dogs. As the owner of her own dog rescue, that is. A second act made possible by the reskilling courses Lisa's taking now with AARP to help make sure her income lives as long as she does. And she can finally run with the big dogs. And the small dogs, who just think they're big dogs. That's why the younger you are, the more you need AARP. Learn more at aarp.org/skills.
The lineup for Thursday night's pre-commencement event at the University of Alabama just got a lot heftier on Tuesday. In addition to an address by President Trump, former Crimson Tide football coach Nick Saban will make an appearance, reports AL.com's Patrick Darrington. Trump announced on social media last week that he'd be given a commencement address at UA. The school later said the president would speak at a special event a day before graduation ceremonies begin. Then on Tuesday, the university announced that he'd be joined by Saban and outgoing UA President Stuart R. Bell. While politics and college football are probably the most contentious supper table topics in Alabama, both Trump and Saban are in friendly territory. Trump carried Alabama in all three of his presidential elections, and Saban won 6 national championships in Tuscaloosa. However, multiple protests are being planned in reaction to Trump's appearance, including one that's expected to feature former Texas Congressman and Democratic presidential candidate Beto O'Rourke and former U.S. Senator Doug Jones. Saban, who famously steers clear of politics, has so far not attracted any announced protests. The Alabama legislature has given final passage to a pair of crime-related bills, reports AL.com's Mike Kaysen. Now, one would increase the penalty for firing a gun into a home or vehicle to a Class A felony. That'll get you 10 to 99 years in prison. The other is a constitutional amendment that would broaden the list of charges that allow a judge to hold a person in jail without bail. The original Aniah's law expanded the exception to the right to bail to non-capital murder, first-degree kidnapping, rape, sodomy, sexual torture, domestic violence, human trafficking, burglary, arson, robbery, terrorism, and aggravated abuse of a child under the age of 6. Now, this new bill would add 2 more charges to that list: solicitation, attempt, or conspiracy to commit murder, or firing a gun into an occupied dwelling, building, railroad, locomotive, railroad car, aircraft, automobile, truck, or watercraft. Both bills were from State Senator Will Barfoot of Montgomery. A governor's signature would put the legislation on the ballot for voters to decide. On Tuesday, Alabama state troopers responded to a call about a car crash involving a kangaroo, reports AL.com's Carol Robinson. Your first thought might be that whoever called that in was hopped up on something. But no, there actually was a kangaroo on the loose along Interstate 85 between Auburn and Tuskegee. Now, it's not a unique situation in Alabama. There was a kangaroo chase early last year in Bessemer, and a few years ago, Jackie Legs, the Coleman kangaroo, made a couple of brief escapes and was recaptured. We can now conclusively report that there are many more confirmed kangaroo sightings in Alabama than confirmed sightings of the elusive black panther, of which everybody other than the wildlife officials have caught brief glimpses of over the past few years. But back to Tuesday's kangaroo. An Aaliyah dispatcher contacted the owner of a local Lee County petting zoo who confirmed that there was a missing kangaroo. Both sides of the interstate were shut down while officers tried to wrangle the roo. The animal's owner finally used a tranquilizer gun to make the capture. There were no reports of injuries to motorists or marsupials. And here's a national story, but one that directly or indirectly affects all consumers. And it's an update on one of the points of the conversation that William Thornton and I had regarding tariffs and the shipping industry a couple weeks ago. Obviously, import tariffs have downsides for businesses that make their bottom lines off imports, such as those at the Port of Mobile. But higher tariffs and taxes can also lead to not only higher prices, but less economic activity. Now, if the cost of business is higher, firms and consumers might choose to do less business. I like the idea of my next golf driver having a Made in America tag on it, but if it's going to cost an extra $100, I might choose to hit what's already in my bag for another year or two. Now, caught in between are companies like the United Parcel Service. And Bill just reported that UPS announced on Tuesday it would be shutting down 73 facilities and cutting 20,000 jobs, at least partly based on projections of people doing less business under the Trump administration's tariffs. Likely, part of the equation here is also UPS's thin profit margins it previously said it makes off delivering goods from Amazon and increased labor automation. CEO Carol Tomei said that cuts, quote, could not be timelier amid the shifting and uncertain trade environment. Hey, we're still opening up our Friday news quizzes to listeners who'd like to come on the show and take one. We tape those on Thursdays. If you're interested, just send me an email to imorgan, IMORGAN, at AL.com with quiz in the subject field. Thank you so much for listening to us. We're going to be back here in the morning. Until then, come by and see what we're doing anytime you want to on the World Wide Web at AL.com.